Hello everyone, I am Tenixium and I'm going to be talking about competitive Pokemon, particularly something different. So you see, growing up and playing Pokemon was kind of a double-edged sword for me. While yes, I love Pokemon with all my heart, other people didn't. And it was very hard to have this really niche interest where no one really got why I liked it so much. And I was ostracized for it a lot by peers and even my family. And something changed when I got older. I don't know what it was, but it became this weird phenomenon where I could talk about competitive Pokemon to my friends or to my family, and they would sit down and they would listen to it, which is honestly just a huge upgrade in life, like no joke. But here's the thing. I feel sad about it because they would sit down and listen to me talk about competitive Pokemon, and I know that they're getting confused or they don't really understand what I do. And I realized this at work yesterday because my coworker's boyfriend asked me like, "Oh, what cards do I use?" Cards? What? So I decided to make a video for all my friends and my family members to actually figure out or to explain what I do for competitive Pokemon. And if you know competitive Pokemon and you know all its ins and outs, this video can also help you improve yourself as a trainer as well. So stick around and consider watching the full thing. But to my friends, sit down and buckle up and try to understand why the heck I play this game. Because to be honest, I don't understand either. So the first thing that I really have to explain here is what Pokemon I actually play. There are many forms of competitive Pokemon. There's the trading card game, there's Pokemon Go, there's Pokemon Unite. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. But then there's also VGC, which stands for Video Game Championships. Or video game competitions? I honestly don't know. But that is played on the Nintendo Switch, like the video game, like actual console. That is what I play. I know nothing about the trading card games. I know nothing about Pokemon Go. I know nothing about Pokemon Unite. Except that Venusaur and Gengar are broken, but that's just my own opinion. But whatever. Everything that I'll be saying will relate to VGC. And another thing I want to clarify is that this is just my own flow through, or my own, I guess, procedures for competitive Pokemon. You can play competitive Pokemon and have a completely different system. That's okay. I'm not claiming to be an expert on anything because I'm not. I'm honestly trash at this game, but whatever. It's okay. And there's a cat in my room now. Hello, Apollo. So, with all of these formalities out of the way, let's get into what the heck I do for competitive Pokemon. And the first thing is called meta-analysis. You see, one of my favorite quotes that I like to say about competitive Pokemon is that it's not just a game, it's a meta game. And that is to say that the competitive scene evolves, shifts, and changes. So Pokemon A might be good like for a few months, then be trash the next few months, and then the months after that, it might be good again. It just depends on how the metagame evolves. So it's up to the players themselves to figure out what Pokemon are strong and what Pokemon are weak. Now, again, this video is for my friends who know nothing about competitive Pokemon, so I'm not gonna get into the, like, meat of what makes a Pokemon strong or weak, but just know that some Pokemon are weaker than others, and some are stronger than others, and some rule the metagame for an entire year. Cough cough, Fluttermane. One of the most valuable methods we use to analyze the metagame is to watch film. I'm not joking. Just like a football player or a boxer might watch film of their opponents, Pokemon trainers will watch film of regional tournaments happening. They might watch popular YouTubers like Aaron Zhang, who is a very skilled Pokemon trainer. They might watch videos of James Beck, another competitive Pokemon player. They might watch my channel, cough cough, where I might showcase a few battles and whatnot, and they'll learn what is popular in the metagame. Because what is popular usually means what is strong. And then from there, what they'll do is they'll take two different routes. Or I guess I should say, we, as in trainers, take two different routes. Do we, A, use the Pokemon that have proven to be strong in the metagame, or do we use Pokemon that counter those strong Pokemon in the metagame? You see, Pokemon is like rock, paper, scissors, but instead of 3 things, you have like 1,000 different things. That is to say, Pokemon can be strong, but there's no Pokemon that is completely invincible. It always has a counter. So, like I said before, trainers might try to use those strong Pokemon that are popular, or they might try to use Pokemon that directly counter those strong Pokemon. And honestly, if you look at a whole lot of different teams for Pokemon, by teams, I mean the group of Pokemon that you will use in a tournament, you have a mix of Pokemon that are just flat out strong, and Pokemon that are meant to counter other strong Pokemon. A good example of this is Wolf Glick's winning team for the Charlotte Regionals. Essentially, what this team had was, I forget what it had on it, Ogerpon, Rillaboom, Farigiraf, and Fluttermane. And then Incineroar and Urshifu. Yes, got them all. For context, you have 6 Pokemon on your team, total. Wolf's team was very, very unique in the sense that it had Farigiraf, a Pokemon that has not been seen that much in competitive usage. But however, he made it work very, very well. He also had Rillaboom by its side, and Farigiraf and Rillaboom had such good synergy that trainers like myself have begun to use those themselves in order to build strong teams. But however, while there are players out there who are using this core of Farigiraf and Rillaboom, you also have players who are going, okay, these 2 Pokemon are strong together, how do I beat them? And you now have things like, I mean, this won't mean anything to you guys, but Pokemon like Chi-Yu, Pokemon like Landorus Incarnate, Pokemon like, I don't know what else, drawing a blank here. But whatever, there are ways to beat this core, and players are opting to use those strategies rather than the core itself. After we analyze the metagame, what players would do then is build their team of 6 Pokemon, and prepare those Pokemon very specifically as well. In most videos, this is where people will talk about effort values and individual values, or EVs and IVs. I'm not gonna do that. For the sake of this video, consider IVs like a Pokemon's genes, and EVs like a Pokemon's workout routine. You can't really change their IVs all that much, but you can change a Pokemon's EVs to whatever you want. And with these EVs, you can say boost a Pokemon's health if you want, or their speed, or their defenses, or their offenses to match whatever needs you want. And this is where Pokemon gets very, very complex, because let's say you and I have the same Pokemon. We're gonna call it Pokemon A. And I decide to put my Pokemon's EVs in its defense, meaning that I'm training it to survive more hits. Now let's say that you put your Pokemon's EVs, this Pokemon A, in its offensive stats. So while my Pokemon A would take more hits, your Pokemon A would do more damage. They're the same Pokemon, but they play entirely differently. And it's up for trainers to decide, do y'all want to use Pokemon A defensively or Pokemon A offensively? Now, in a whole lot of scenarios, it's kind of obvious what route to take for Pokemon. Like, for example, Fluttermane, this thing, it's going to be offensive, while Pokemon like Among Us are going to be defensive. And you can tell just by how the Pokemon plays and whatnot, and again, by the meta-analysis. So let's say we have our Pokemon team all planned out. We have our EVs, and then we have our good vibes. Now, what do we do after this? We prepare, and how we do that is we look at matchups. Pokemon isn't just a game of rock, paper, scissors with the individual Pokemon. It's also like that for whole teams. I can have a team that is really, really bad into your team, meaning that just the way that the game works, I might lose 9 out of 10 times to your team, even though both teams are good. That's just the way the game goes. So we'll call those scenarios bad matchups. Like, for example, Pokemon have different types. You know, you have fire types, you have water types, you have flying types, so on and so forth. If I had a team of all fire type Pokemon, and you had a team of all water type Pokemon, then I would say, oh man, I have a bad matchup into your team. But however, you would say you have a good matchup into my team. But however, in competitive Pokemon, you can't really plan for everything. There are going to be teams where your team just has a bad matchup into the opponent's team. So, what do? You prepare more. You do what I like to call lines. What lines are essentially pre-planned moves that you want to do in order to beat this bad matchup. If you play chess to any degree, it's like that, essentially. Let's say Pokemon A is bad into Pokemon B, and the trainer that has Pokemon A might say, okay, if I see Pokemon B, I won't use Pokemon A, but rather Pokemon C. Kind of like that, but more complex. So essentially what trainers would do is they'll develop lines to counter tough matchups, or you can even go simpler and just develop lines for your team in order to use it properly. Like, for example, this is off script, by the way. I was watching a guy on Twitch, and he was using people's teams and whatnot. And I was like, hey man, I have this really cool team and whatnot. You should use it. No, I said that the team is fire. It was very, very good. And he said, if you said that the team is fire, then it probably sucks. And I was like, what? Like, this is so condescending. But he agreed to use the team, but he didn't know the lines in order to use it properly. So I sat there and I watched him just completely and utterly make my team look bad, even though in my hands, I was like top 1,000 in the world. It's just a very funny story to let you know how important lines are for competitive Pokemon. Let's go back to my previous example with that Pokemon A, where you had one Pokemon A that had a lot of EVs in its defense and health, while you had another Pokemon A that had its EVs and attack. What both trainers might have done in this scenario is to look at the formula. Yes, there's a formula for Pokemon that determines how much damage their Pokemon could do, based on their stats, which are based on their EVs. For example, let's say I gave my Pokemon A 100 EVs in its defense, because I know that with 100 EVs in its defense, it can live an attack from an opposing Pokemon A. Likewise, let's say that my opponent put in like 200 EVs into their Pokemon A, because they know that when you have that many EVs in your attack, you are guaranteed to knock out opposing Pokemon A's in 2 turns. And it probably sounds really complex, and I do apologize for that, but it really is a complex sport. Like, I consider Pokemon to be a mix between chess, blackjack, and I don't know, something else. And I love it. It's very, very cool and very, very complex. Like, you'll have people who make entire, like, books on their, not books, more like essays on their team and how to use it and whatnot. Like, I remember I was in a class where I had to write this huge, for lack of a better term, essay, and I was struggling to write it, but then I wrote like this 12-page report on how to use a team that I made like a year ago, and it's just, that's how much I love this game. And I hope that I don't just spend like half an hour rambling and make complete and utter nonsensical gibberish. And I hope that you guys understood what I said. But yeah, in the meantime, don't forget that you will love to that you matter. And I'll see you all later. Bye.